Behind the scenes, Jamie Dornan's heartfelt recollections of Dakota J. There are memories that announce themselves loudly marked by applause, by flashing lights, by the finality of a director's call. And then there are the other memories. The quieter ones. The ones that settle in unnoticed, accumulating gently until, years later, you realize they shape everything. Jamie Dornan would come to understand this distinction. When people spoke about the chemistry between him and Dakota Johnson, they usually spoke in shorthand. Words like alive, unexpected, intent. Those moments, unscripted and unguarded, were the ones that stayed. The we. The first step on any set carries a peculiar gravity. It is heavy with anticipation, with untested expectations and silent comparisons. Jamie remembered walking onto the soundstage the first week, acutely aware of how much attention the project had already attracted. Everyone had opinions before a single frame was. Dakota A. No one to rock. They excellent. There was Anne. Jamie. She smiled at that, not a big smile, but one that lingered. Then I guess we get to the side without CO and V. It was an offhand remark. Easy to miss. But something in the way she said I stayed. D. Fei. Jamie O. She. Once, F. He. She. It was. They all. Jamie came to realize that the color communicated most clearly in stillness. While others filled silence with chatter, she allowed it to exist, to breathe. She seemed to understand that not every moment needed commentary. During one night shoot, the temperature dropped unexpectedly. The crew bundled up in jackets, the air growing sharp and metallic. Jamie, stuck in costume, tried to ignore the cold, but the caller noticed immediately. Without a word, she draped her own coat over his shoulders while they waited for the next sight shoot. You needed more than I do. There was no flirtation in the exchange. No performative kindness. Just an instinctive response to another person's discomfort. Jamie later thought about how rare that was in environments above. It was easy to act chemistry. It was harder and rarer too. When scripted live. Not all the memory W. Some were filled with laughter that erupted unexpectedly, dissolving tension like sugar in hot water. Jamie remembered the scene that had gone wrong repeatedly, each take unraveling in some near, absurd way. Props failed. Lines tangled. The crew grew. On the fifth attempt, Dakota missed her mark and bumped directly into him. For a split second, they froze, then she burst out laughing. Not a polite laugh. A full, unrestrained one that bent her forward and made her clap a hand over her mouth. Jamie laughed too, helplessly. The director called cut, exasperated but smiling despite himself. The moment reset the entire room. When they returned to the scene, something had shifted. The tension was gone, Later, Jamie realized that the ease carried through to the performance itself. The scene breathed differently. It felt only. Chemistry, he learned, wasn't about intensity alone. It was about shared release. The spa. As filming progressed, the characters they played grew more complex, more entangled. But off camera, Jamie and Dakota maintained a careful boundary between the work and themselves. They didn't blur lines. They didn't pretend the story was. And yet, there was a tenderness in how they protected each other from TH. One day, when scenes ran especially dark, Dakota had a habit of changing the subject immediately after rap. She'd talk about books she was reading, films she loved, ridiculous things she'd overheard in past. It's like opening a window, she explained once. Jamie appreciated that more than he could articulate. It reminded him that acting was something you did, not way. The shade. Years later, when interviews inevitably asked about their on-screen connection, Jamie found himself struggling to explain it. Not because it was mysterious, but there was no single defining moment. No dramatic confession. Just a series of small, accumulated gestures. A glance that said, "Are you okay?" A hand over during long hours. A joke whispered under breath to break the weight of expectation. These were not things that made headlines. But they built trust. And trust, Jamie believed, was the real foundation of any convincing intimacy on screen. The aftermath of ending. When filming finally wrapped, there was relief but also a quiet sadness. Projects end. Sets dismantle. People scatter back into their separate lives. On the last day, Dakota hugged him tightly, longer than necessary. Take care of yourself, she said. You too, he replied. It wasn't a dramatic farewell. There were no promises to stay in constant touch, just a mutual understanding that they had shared something meaningful, even if it defied easy definition. Jamie watched her walk away and felt grateful. Not for the fame the project brought, not for the attention, but for the reminder that even in the most artificial of environments, something real could still exist. Looking back, now, when Jamie reflects on those years, it's the unscripted moments that rise first in his memory. Not the lines, not the scenes people analyze frame by frame. He remembers Dakota's quiet humor, her steadiness, the way she noticed what others miss. He remembers learning slowly, subtly that chemistry is not something you force or manufacture. It's something you allow to grow in the spaces when no one is watching. And perhaps that was the real secret behind what audiences saw. Not passion staged for the camera, but mutual respect practiced when the camera was gone. In the end, Jamie understands that those off-camera moments were never meant for anyone else. They weren't performances. They weren't stories to be sold. They were simply human. And sometimes, that is what lingers the longest.